really excited to be here at the Roaring Camp and Big Trees Narrow Gauge Railroad here in Felton, California. After we pulled into the parking lot, we looked over to the right and we noticed all of these different parts of trains. There were wheels and shafts and all kinds of different things. So my husband went over and he started walking around and taking pictures, and he started speaking with one of the fellas that was working there in the rail yard. The fellow was painting the name on one of the trains, and it was interesting to find out that the people here at the Roaring Camp Railroad, they collect train parts from all over the place. They go to swap meets, any place where they can find parts of trains, they bring in and collect. And then people that are into having trains and need parts, they'll contact them and buy off of them, and they swap parts all over the country. Anyway, it's really a big thing. So we found out that people that love trains, they don't just love trains, they really love their trains, and they love what they're doing here at Roaring Camp Railroad. They do a lot of restoration, and they've got a couple of big engines in the works being restored as we speak. This here is one of the old rail cars that they're working on and restoring, and it used to be in the works, and it used to be hooked on the back of one of the trains, and they used to have it for a little party place where people would rent it and go ahead and have their private parties as they got pulled along. Anyway, they do some fascinating work here, and anyway, we thought we would have fun looking at some of this restoration that's going on here at Roaring Camp. We're going to be entering now into the town of Roaring Camp, which is really cool. It's an old western town, and we absolutely love it. It's very quaint and just gorgeous. We're going to be going on the Dixiana today, and we'll be taking the 1:30 in the afternoon train ride, and we're really looking forward to it, and we're going to take you on board with us. Well, let's talk a little bit about the Roaring Camp and Big Trees Narrow Gauge Railroad. It's a 3-foot narrow gauge tourist railroad in California that starts from the Roaring Camp Depot in Felton, California, and runs up steep grades through redwood forest to the top of nearby Bear Mountain, a distance of 3 1/4 miles. Several steam engines date from the 1890s and are some of the oldest and most authentically preserved narrow gauge steam engines still providing regular passenger service in the United States. The Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad in Colorado and New Mexico has the oldest steam engines dating back to 1883. The American Society of Mechanical Engineers designated 3 engines at Roaring Camp and Big Trees Railroad as Historic Mechanical Engineering Landmark number 134 in 1988. Roaring Camp Railroad's operations began in 1963 under the guidance of F. Norman Clark from 1935 to 1985, who was the founder and owner. His purpose was to keep a family tradition of constructing railroads and to bring the romance and color of steam railroading back to America. In 1958, Clark found the engine Dixiana abandoned near a coal mine in the Appalachian Mountains. He described it as looking like a rusty pile of junk. Dixiana was reconditioned and began service in 1963 on rails that had been shipped around Cape Horn in 1881. The railway route was laid out so that as few trees as possible would have to be cut on the 170 acres Clark acquired with a 99-year lease of the larger Big Trees Ranch. Big Trees Ranch was bought in 1867 by San Francisco businessman Joseph Warren Welch to preserve the giant redwood trees from logging. It was the first property in the state acquired specifically for that purpose. In 1930, the Welch family sold part of the property to Santa Cruz County, which eventually became part of Henry Cowell Redwoods State Park. The first scheduled train trip was on April 6, 1963, with 44 ticketed passengers. love listening to the whistle of that train. Go, Dixiana, go. Clark's wife, Georgiana, Vice President of Operations, assumed the ownership and management responsibilities following his death on December 2, 1985. Originally, 2 large trestles formed a corkscrew loop at Spring Canyon, but these were destroyed by a 1976 fire, the smoke from which could be seen from San Francisco. Within 6 months, a switchback was constructed to bypass the severed loop, and the entire line was returned to service. The switchback has an estimated 9.5% grade, making it the steepest passenger grade still in use. The length of the tail tracks in the switchback restricts the trains that may be operated to 6 cars or fewer. Special events are held to raise funds for repair and reconstruction of the trestles and steam locomotives at Roaring Camp. In 2003, the first Day Out with Thomas special event was held. The event was the single largest in the 40-year history of the Roaring Camp, with an estimated 25,000 participants over a 3-day period. Now, this train that just pulled into the station comes from Santa Cruz, and it's a round trip ticket that you can get, or a one-way, so it'll bring you down to Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk and back again. After you have time to run around the boardwalk, you can hop back on the train and come back to Roaring Camp within a couple of hours, or spend the day and take the last train back. Now, the train that we're going to be on today at 1:30 will be the Dixiana Shay number 1, and this train was built in 1912. This engine was originally owned by the Alacolce Lumber Company and was used on the Smoky Mountain Railroad in Tennessee. The Dixiana is named for a small narrow gauge mining railroad now abandoned out of Dixiana, Virginia. Notable characteristics include the boiler, which was set left of centerline to compensate for the weight and position of the engine, giving it a lopsided appearance, and the engine design of a 3-cylinder exhaust system. The Dixiana should be pulling into the station shortly. If you're needing something to do while you're waiting for your train, you could always try your hand at some gold panning. I hear the Dixiana coming in. It's almost all aboard. We're off for a train ride, and you can come and join us. All aboard!
Of the wheel, giving you an all-wheel drive locomotive. It's sort of like driving your car in first gear all the time. It's very, very powerful, but not very fast, as you can see. And Dixiana was completed back in October of 1912 by the Lima Locomotive and Machine Company out in Lima, Ohio. She is currently 108 years old. And when she was first built, she was built as a coal-burning locomotive. Makes sense, north of the coal mine. But there's one big downside of burning coal, especially on a passenger railroad that runs through it first and switching top cars. And that is, when you burn coal at 10% embers on the top of the train, it's not like a very fun experience for passengers or the going through that. big trees. Most of these big trees around us are known as the quake mark, where they relatively shallow root system that absorb the rest of it. Because they rely so much on this rock break, the roots only are down about 10 to 15 feet, but they reach out to the base of the tree about 100 feet or so, interlocking with all the root systems around them, giving them stability.
The train ride lasts about an hour and a half. Halfway through, they stop, they let you get out for a potty break, and you can walk around, talk with the conductor as well as the engineer, and then they board you back on for the trip back down the mountain. It's really a lot of fun.
Made with floor.
But it also takes a very talented crew to be able to get this train up this grade. Back on that engine is phasing it from receiver.
Well, this concludes our train ride on the Dixiana. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. You've been road tracking with Row and Low. If you enjoyed our video, please do subscribe, and that way you'll be notified when I post new content. Thank you for watching, and happy travels.